Hi all, welcome to my presentation, and I'd just like to take this opportunity first of all to thank you for taking the time to listen in today. I hope you'll be able to get some benefit from this discussion. So essentially today's discussion is going to be based around my research paper and my approaches to carrying out this research, which is in the area of botnets and essentially how we can mitigate them. So on this slide I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I came to decide my research question and proposal. From the offset, I did feel that I wanted to focus on the cyber end of things. I spent considerable time reading through the countless research papers in the past that have been written, which varied from cloud computing to malware analysis and beyond. I did in fact encounter some research in regards to botnets and the damage that they've done previously, but I quickly came to realise that there was no concrete papers on how we could actually possibly mitigate the impact of these botnets. So from here, I decided on the main part of my paper, which was to discuss how we could leverage a framework such as the MITRE framework to help organisations to limit or indeed stop the impact of a botnet attack. For the research piece, I spent considerable time on this as I felt if I got this section defined and correct, the rest of the paper would flow. The identification of literature for analysis is based on a variety of approaches. The main focal point of literature gathering is based on previous pieces of works in the field in terms of research papers, relevant articles and business journals. The primary focus initially was on gathering information which would allow me to provide concrete definitions of the core terms in this paper, specifically cyber, botnets, command and control, cyber warfare and the MITRE attack framework. To delve deeper into the specifics of my research, I focused initially on the IEEE published papers and journals and filtered per keywords such as cyber and botnet. I also focused heavily on the MITRE framework organisation website itself. This site offers a vast array of information ranging from a variety of topics, so this proved challenging in order to pinpoint information that was relevant to this paper. Once I did pinpoint the source, however, and the areas of interest I would be targeting, I then decided on what would be the best approach for me to carry out this paper. Having researched various approaches, I decided that for me personally, the best approach would be a Scrum methodology approach. This approach suited me mainly as it's very structured and allowed me to carry out my research in sprints or stages, which I enjoyed. I also like the idea of ticking off each sprint before progressing to the next. The first logical step in the literature review was to define the various core elements of the paper, as I felt that these can often be taken for granted. I felt that these terms are often thrown interchangeably under the umbrella of cyber. However, I would argue that these terms lack clear and agreed upon definitions. These definitions offered an apt starting point for this paper in order to better understand the issue at hand. Once these definitions were provided, the rest of the literature review could begin. I then went on to provide a justification for my paper. As mentioned previously, there has been no core papers focused specifically on mitigating the impact of botnets and the havoc they cause. My aim of the paper was to highlight the dangers of botnets and advise how organisations can leverage the MITRE attack framework to protect their systems and networks. Having defined the broader areas of cybersecurity and cyber warfare, I then went into detail about botnets, which are increasingly becoming the vector of choice in the cyber warfare field globally. Botnets have been the cause of some of the largest cyber attacks the world has ever seen. The frightening truth is that despite research and global efforts to curtail these botnets, they continue to grow in size and sophistication. With each passing year, we are seeing an increase in the frequency and severity of these botnet attacks, due mainly to advances in technology which can leave cyber systems at risk if not secured effectively. As a botnet is essentially a greatly complex piece of malware which incorporates components of malicious software such as viruses, worms and spyware. And so with this, the combined power of these machines can be used for carrying out crimes such as DDoS attacks, information theft and spam, amongst many other vectors. I talked through the early days of botnets dating back to 2001 and explained how these have grown and evolved over the years, highlighting the Marina botnet, Conficker botnet and Mariposa botnet to name but a few. I also provided an overview of some of the staggering cost implications of botnets from the past and talked through how some of these modern approaches cyber criminals are taking to advance their botnet armies. To conclude the literature review section, I provided an overview of the MITRE ATT&CK framework and how it can be used by organizations. The MITRE ATT&CK framework is a globally accessible knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques based on real-world observations. The ATT&CK knowledge base is used as a foundation for the development of specific threat models and methodologies in the private sector, in government, and in the cybersecurity product and service community. Botnets are an excellent use case for the application of the MITRE ATT&CK framework as, depending on the botnet type, the botnet can touch on the vast majority of the sections outlined in the ATT&CK framework. For my research, I focus on the core areas that are directly applicable to botnets and the techniques adversaries would attempt to utilize to their advantage. These core areas of focus were privilege escalation, defense evasion, discovery, exfiltration, and command and control. I then provided some scenarios where the MITRE ATT&CK framework could be leveraged during a botnet attack. Scenarios included where attackers are targeting commonly used ports and how network intrusion prevention systems can be used to mitigate this, or where attackers are attempting to compress data and how data loss prevention systems can be leveraged in this scenario. For the conclusion of my research paper, I provided an overview of the current state of the cyber world. I outlined the daunting challenges ahead for organizations and how they will need to be on top of their game if they are to remain secure. I then provided some staggering statistics as to the severity of cyber attacks, such as a prediction that the cost of damages related to cyber crime will exceed $6 trillion by 2021. I concluded by again highlighting the need for organizations to leverage a robust defense framework such as the MITRE ATT&CK framework. In conclusion, I would like to thank you all for your attention and I wish you all the best.